Good morning, everyone. This is Dan O'Sullivan with your Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, November the 8th. Hey, we're joined by our usual crowd today. We got Tom, Lee, Gentry, and Tracy. Going to check in and talk a little bit of fishing as this water gets cooler and these days get shorter. We'll be right back with what the guys have to say. Hey, folks, Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and we got a lot to be thankful for, including that this man is joining us here to talk about fishing on Lake Guntersville. I know we're not quite to Thanksgiving yet, but is there stuff to be thankful for up there on the bay?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Dano. I mean, you got to be thankful. I mean, there's big old full bellies of bass, and the crappie are coming, all that kind of good stuff. But, I tell you, right now, I think with the way the water's kind of cooled down, of course the days have gotten a lot shorter, everybody knows, but it's kind of a timing thing. So the fish are there's a lot of fish to be had, but it's definitely a timing thing, and I learned that this past week, where you're just able to catch fish in certain areas when when you hit that dinner bell time. And it's just it's one of those things about bass fishing that makes it really intriguing is the thought process that goes into why and the hows. And sometimes you think you figure it out and the bass teach you different, but the fish are definitely out there. I mean, we saw most of the better fish probably in that 8 to 10 foot range around submerged grass. A crankbait was the best bait for it. To me, it seemed more like a reaction bite. It wasn't so much, hey, I'm hungry, but more of just a reaction bite. Some of those shallower waters, have really depleted themselves of, the bass. And, as usual, the better bites later in the day, too. So, it's typical kind of fishing, but it's Guntersville, so it's atypical.
Okay, so what are we looking at water temperature wise? Are we into the 60s yet? Have we gotten below that? What's going on?
Absolutely. We're starting to see some high 50s and some low to mid 60s. And, that water really cooled off in just a week and a half. I mean, it went from, mid 70s down to, I say cool. I mean, I really like it low 50s to call it winter fishing, but, it's getting there. It just hasn't really positioned all the fish yet. You still got some fish that are wanting to stay shallow or at least come up there. The flats are not as productive as they were. You're starting to see those creek bends and things like that where the fish can quickly move up and down in the water column. So, it's just not put all the fish in the right spot yet, but it's definitely moving on its way. I would think by Thanksgiving we'll be in full swing.
That's cool. Well, brother, we appreciate everything as always. We thank you for all your insights and everything that you do every week to help keep us on fish. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, we got Gentry Gordy, who is on duty on his EMT services today, so we're going to make this quick. Gentry, let's talk about Lake Martin or Jordan Lake. You hit where we want to go today.
We'll start at Martin. I know it's, cooler weather is making it a little bit better. The water is still falling. I talked to a friend of mine that was up there day before yesterday, and early in the morning, late in the afternoons, those shallow points with a walking bait, and it was just all you wanted to catch. No big ones, nothing really over 2 pounds, but, from 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, man, it wasn't anything in particular, just shallow points. And he said the bait didn't really even have to be there, just throw a top water plug across and they were eating it. But middle of the day, it got a little bit tougher, had to go to some trash piles and some little bit deeper stuff with a small ball jig, spider jig type thing, Texas rig, Senkos, and shaky heads.
Top water baits. Are we moving them fast now, or are we starting to slow them down where it might be like chick, chick, chick?
Is it going to be slower now? He didn't really mention a cadence, but I'm going to tell you something on Martin, and it's different for every lake, but on Lake Martin, those spotted bass, nothing moves fast enough. I throw a crankbait up there on a 7-3-1, and I reel it as fast as I can. And those spotted bass up there will annihilate it. And I've actually found that I get a lot more bites doing that, especially when I hit a piece of cover with it. It deflects a lot harder, and those fish cannot stand it. But Martin, I'd always go fast, even with a jerk bait, even with a top water bait. Now, granted, you can always slow it down, but at Martin, I work it.
All right, let's turn to Jordan Lake. I know the crappie are kind of starting to move all over the place a little bit, getting up on those brush piles, moving up a little bit shallower. So we can talk about that a little bit, or tell me what's going on in Jordan with the bass fishing.
Yeah, I was able to get with a friend of mine that does a lot of crappie fishing and a lot of bass fishing, and he said, "Man, it's all bait driven. They're still up under the big schools of shad. Topwater bait's getting some of those bigger spots to come up, and but he said even like you go inside the pockets a little bit, and that's where you find your crappie, especially if you can get around some docks with some trash piles where that bait's moving in." And he said, and then right out in the middle of the pocket where the big ball of bait is, those spots are just hanging up under them and dropping a minnow and Alabama rig through them. I mean, we talked about that last week, but he said it ain't changed. They're still stacked up underneath the bait.
Well, brother, we appreciate everything as always, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again next week, my friend. Hey, we got our good friend Tracy Robinson joining us. He's going to talk a little bit of Logan, Martin, and Lay Lake. Tracy, you pick where you want to start.
Yeah, we started Logan. Logan's fishing real good still been stable with the weather. Water temperatures, they're slowly creeping down with some of these cooler nights, but it's making the fish bite a little bit better. But as we've talked about for the past 2 or 3 weeks, Logan's been fishing really good, mostly up around the shorelines where most of the bites are coming from. There's a lot of that crankbait action going on those rocky banks at Logan, and that's a kind of a dominant pattern, year round there, but it's really happening right now, bouncing the square bills off of those chert rock banks. But the docks also are having some fish on them, some mix of largemouth and spotted bass on those main lake docks with a chatterbait. So that's a pretty good bite as well. And the crappie seem to be even piling up even more around the brush around these docks too. I'm seeing them on the forward facing sonar around these docks, but the guys that I'm actually seeing loading the boats with them, they're dragging minnows in the creek channels out there, kind of high up in the water column, and catching a lot of the crappie out there in the creek channels. It's fishing a little bit like it would in February, March for the crappie out there in those main creek channels at Logan, but they're catching a lot of those right now. Lay's fishing good too around the grass, the swim jig, the top water I talk about all the time. That's still a consistent bite at Lay. Also, during the middle of the day, I took a day last week and went down to Lay, and we went to the lower end of the lake, and we were catching a lot of fish on the spinnerbait. It seemed like whenever you get around some wood and some rock on those bluff walls on that lower end of the lake, you could get bit down there. Paint Creek, I'm still seeing a lot of guys on that lower end out in the middle with the forward-facing sonars chasing the minnows and the bait balls around, and I know they're catching them as well. I'm seeing a few bent poles out there with those guys when I'm around them. So that lake's still fishing real good as well. And as mentioned, the crappie are still in that standing timber at Lay. You kind of may have to scroll around a little bit, taking a look at some of the standing timber, but that seems to be where the bulk of the crappie are, is in that standing timber. They're in about 15 foot of water when you get around that timber. Let me rephrase that, Dano. The crappie are in 15 foot deep on the timber, but the timber may be in 20 to 25 foot of water, but about 15 foot down is where you're going to see the crappie in that timber on the lower end of the lake at Lay.
Can you get vertical on top of those, or you wanting to cast at them?
You could do either. It's a little quicker, easier getting right over them, and they don't seem to be real spooky either. So dropping down on them with the jig seems to be a lot more productive pattern.
Yeah, going vertical on even the bass bite when they're not spooky, that's a good thing to do. Tracy, as always, brother, we appreciate everything, and we will talk to you again next week, my friend. Hey, we are joined by Lee Pitts, going to talk a little bit of fishing on Neely, Henry, and Weiss Lake. Lee, I know fall time's good for the drains and other kind of things, but is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that it's funny you say that. The fish really, really are relating to it right now. They like to get in that drain and just kind of, just do their thing and just get their groove on and just work all up through it right now. And that's what we're looking at. If you can find a little brush in it, and something like that, and some of the, you find those hard spots, and that's just the especially with the crappie right now, they're trying to get into some of the shallower water. They're coming out of that main lake, and they're moving up, looking for the brush piles, for the hard spots, and some of the stumps that are out there, and that's what we're trying to key on right now.
What about the bass? Are they kind of starting to move around in open water? Do we want to get in the cracks and the crevices up there?
Well, they like it tight. They're wanting to get up there tight right now, and it's just they're up around the rocks and still on the docks. You can get on some of these docks where it's been kind of a, a good hangout for them. They can get out of the sunlight, and they get up there underneath that trash. And this time of year, they when you find trash, that's where they want to be at.
Yep, I know. And moving baits are going to be key right now across our spectrum here. But I hear Neely Henry's kicking a little bit better than Weiss right now. Is that true?
It is, and I think it's because of the river system. They're getting a little bit more flow. They're getting through there, and it's kind of the same deal. You can get up there skinny and get in that shallow water. I know the crankbait bite has been real good, and a spinnerbait bite. If you get a little bit of wind and some current, that spinnerbait's been good. And mixing it up with white chartreuse, double willows. They kind of wanting more, look like a little ball of shad coming through there. That thump they're staying away from some, but it's just kind of, and you can still pitch plastics. It's one of those deals, getting around the cover, getting around some rock and these harder bottoms. That's what they're looking for.
What about the crappie on Neely Henry? Are they starting to move up under those docks, or are they kind of going to maybe some of the bridge pilings and stuff?
They're more on some of the docks that's close to deep water right now. Some of the smaller fish are getting there, but you can still catch some good ones. A lot of the fish on Neely, they really, really relate to that wood cover out there deeper. And that's when they're getting out there and kind of, still holding out, and they get a good flow of that water coming through. The bait's still out there. You got some bait moving shallow, getting around these docks in the shade. And I love to shoot docks, and that's one of the things. You can cover water, and usually when you find them, it'll be on one or two docks in that little secondary point coming in and a turn. They just kind of scatter out and get on those poles, and you don't have to be deep. It could be in that 3, 4, 5 foot of water.
Brother, we appreciate everything. Thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you again next week. Well, that wraps up our Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, November the 8th. Hey, folks, it's time to come in and take a look at some of those new 2026 models. Come see Katie, Patrick, and Melissa there in the dealership in the sales floor. They'll help you find that boat that you've been dreaming about. If you're looking to keep yours going, go see Misty and everybody in the service department, or Pat and everybody in parts. And, of course, we got all that tackle stuff, great gift giving with sunglasses, apparel, hats. We got all the tackle rods and reels that you could look for upstairs in the loft with Colin and Jamie. Come see us at Bucks Island. You are the best part of us, and we appreciate you, folks.